Welcome back once again. In this video, we come to the main event, which is a theory first proposed by Julius Africanus, an early 3rd century Christian. Now we learn about Africanus' solution via a quotation of him by Eusebius in his Church History, Book 1, Chapter 7. So in this video, we're going to be reading for ourselves this document. So let's begin. Eusebius begins by setting the stage. Quote, Matthew and Luke, in their Gospels, have given us the genealogy of Christ differently, and many suppose they are at variance with one another. Since as a consequence, every believer, in ignorance of the truth, has been zealous to invent some explanation which shall harmonize the two passages, permit us to subjoin the account of the matter which has come down to us and which is given by Africanus, who is mentioned by us above in his epistle to Aristides, where he discusses the harmony of the Gospel genealogies. After refuting the opinions of others as forced and deceptive, he gives the account which he had received from tradition in these words, end quote. Now we come to Africanus' quote. Now this is where things get a little complicated, but don't fear, I'm going to stop and explain each portion slowly. So let's begin. Quote, But in order that what I have said may be clear, I shall explain the interchange of the generations. If we reckon the generations from David through Solomon, the third from the end is found to be Mathan, who begot Jacob, the father of Joseph. Okay, let's stop here for a second. He begins by telling us that we're reckoning the generations from David through Solomon. Therefore, we know we're dealing with Matthew's genealogy. He also tells us that the third from the end is found to be Mathan. So let's double check this. So he's starting at Joseph and counting up. 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, he is correct. The third from the end is Mathan. He also tells us Mathan is the one who begot Jacob, the father of Joseph. This is also a true statement. Mathan's son is Jacob, who begot Joseph. Let's now move on to Africanus' next paragraph. But if with Luke we reckon them from Nathan, the son of David, in like manner the third from the end is Melchi, whose son Heli was the father of Joseph, for Joseph was the son of Heli, the son of Melchi. Let's stop here again. So Africanus tells us that we are now dealing with Luke's genealogy. He also tells us that the third from the end is Melchi. But is this true? Let's again start with Joseph and count up. 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, the third from the end is not Melchi, rather it is Mathat. Melchi is in fact the fifth from the end. Furthermore, Africanus writes that Melchi, whose son Heli, was the father of Joseph. Again, this is not a true statement. Melchi's son is Levi, whose son is Mathat, whose son is Heli. Thus, Africanus has skipped 2 generations. Further on, Africanus writes that Mathan and Melchi, although of different families, are declared to be grandfathers of Joseph. This is not correct. While Mathan is Joseph's grandfather according to Matthew, Melchi is not Joseph's grandfather according to Luke. It appears that Africanus has omitted 2 names, Levi and Mathat. And this point is made by Bock, who writes, quote, The problem with this approach is that 2 names intervene in Luke's list between Heli and Melchi, Mathat and Levi. I think this is an extremely important point, which so few people mention when discussing Africanus' theory. There are currently 2 very popular videos on YouTube which appeal to Africanus to reconcile the 2 genealogies, which don't even mention the fact that Africanus is dealing with a different genealogy to the one we have today. These 2 genealogies are made by Inspiring Philosophy and Nathan H. 83, and they are fantastic videos. But they leave out this crucial piece of information. In fact, Nathan H. 83 actually alters the words of Africanus. He replaces Melchi with Mathat in order to make this theory work. I don't think this is acceptable at all, and it demonstrates why we should reject Africanus' theory. However, before we reject this theory, let's analyze the rest of what Africanus tells us. Now, in order to continue to analyze this theory, we're going to have to remove these names. So let's do that now. And let's now continue to read what Africanus writes. Quote, Mathan and Melchi, having married in succession the same woman, begot children who were uterine brothers. For the law did not prohibit a widow, whether such by divorce or by the death of her husband, from marrying another. By Esther then, for this is the woman's name according to tradition, Mathan, a descendant of Solomon, first begot Jacob. And when Mathan was dead, Melchi, who traced his descent back to Nathan, being of the same tribe, but of another family, married her, as before said, and begot a son Heli. Let's now stop and break down these two paragraphs. So Africanus is telling us that Mathan and Malchi both married a woman named Esther. First, Mathan married Esther and gave birth to Jacob. Then after Jacob's birth, Mathan died. Being now free to marry, Esther married Malchi and gave birth to Heli. Thus Jacob and Heli are half-brothers because they share the same mother, Esther. And now that we have brothers, Levirate marriage can now take place. So let's continue to read what Africanus has written. Quote, "Thus we shall find the two, Jacob and Heli, although belonging to different families, yet brethren by the same mother. Of these the one Jacob, when his brother Heli had died childless, took the latter's wife, and begot by her a son, Joseph, his own son by nature, in accordance with reason. Wherefore also it is written, Jacob begot Joseph. But according to law, he was the son of Heli, for Jacob, being the brother of the latter, raised up seed to him." Let's again break down this text. So we are told that there is a woman. Let's call her Sue. Now Sue married Heli, but Heli died before they had any children. Thus, to fulfill Deuteronomy 25, Heli's half-brother Jacob married Sue in order to have a child to carry on Heli's name. So Sue married Jacob, and she gave birth to Joseph. Thus Jacob is the biological father of Joseph, as we are told by Matthew, while Heli, through Levirate marriage, is Joseph's legal father, as we are told by Luke. And that concludes Africanus' theory. So now we have to ask the question, does Africanus' theory work? And the answer is complicated, because in a sense, yes, it does work. If Jacob and Heli were half-brothers and a Levirate marriage took place, this contradiction can be reconciled. However, let's not forget the fact that in order for this theory to work, you need to omit two names from the genealogy, Levi and Mathat. So technically, no, this theory doesn't work, because Africanus omits 2 generations of Luke's genealogy and is therefore not a trustworthy source. So as you can see, the answer is both yes and no. So now coming to our criteria, do we give this a tick or a cross? Well, I think if we're going to be honest, we're going to have to give it a question mark, because we simply do not have enough information to determine the validity of Africanus' theory. And this now brings us to the end of this video, and I hope you've enjoyed it and have a better understanding of Africanus' theory and all the complexities of it. In the next video, we'll be dealing with a theological approach to our dilemma, which is my favorite approach. I hope to see you then.